If you were to say before the year that Week 7 will kick off with an AFC North matchup between the first-place Pittsburgh Steelers and second-place Cincinnati Bengals, your mind would make a lot of assumptions. Most would think that Aaron Rodgers has returned to vintage form in offensive coordinator Arthur Smith's system. You would also assume that Joe Burrow is playing at an MVP caliber level yet again, while the defense may be the reason they do not lead the division. And you would assume that the Baltimore Ravens must be at most a game behind these two in third place, making the AFC North one of the most competitive divisions in the NFL. Unfortunately, most of those hunches would be inaccurate. The Steelers have taken care of business throughout their first 5 contests, going 4-1 to start the year. Rodgers may not be the vintage version of himself at quarterback. However, he is on pace to finish with 3,471 yards, 34 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions on a 68.8% completion percentage. These numbers would be his best season overall since 2021, when he won his 4th career Super Bowl. We will see if those trends continue for Pittsburgh as their schedule increases in difficulty. Sandwiched between the 2 matchups this season with Cincinnati, the Steelers face the Packers, Colts, and Chargers, who all currently hold a position in the postseason. As it currently stands, however, all divisional games for Pittsburgh would be against sub-.500 teams, which goes against another one of the assumptions heading into the season. The loss of Burrow has turned the Bengals into bringing in veteran Joe Flacco to attempt to salvage the season, but the division has seemingly turned into a 3-team race at most. While the Browns were never expected to be a part of the race to begin with, this leaves just the Steelers and Ravens, which is the most notable shock of the season. Baltimore has begun the season just 1-5, with their sole win coming over the Browns, which is the only reason they are not in last place in the division. This not only gives the Steelers a 4-game advantage over the Ravens, but it also gives Pittsburgh the largest divisional lead in the NFL. Despite all this, the division lead may still not be safe. Here is why. After losing their 4th game in a row, Baltimore is grateful for their Week 7 bye week. Not only to spend 2 weeks making much-needed adjustments to their scheme and personnel, but to hopefully allow key players like Lamar Jackson, Roquan Smith, and Patrick Ricard to return to the field. Since Jackson left the Week 4 matchup against the Chiefs due to injury, the Ravens have scored just 20 points in over 9 quarters of football behind backup quarterback Cooper Rush. While the Ravens were not winning when Jackson was on the field, it was not due to a lack of production from the former MVP. In his first 3 games, the Ravens averaged 37 points per game and 331 yards per game. Jackson had 869 yards and 10 touchdowns to just 1 interception on the year, leading the league in touchdown percentage, 10.5%, and passer rating, 130.5. While being without one of the most dynamic players in the NFL will obviously alter your team's offensive production, the loss of Ricard has been a detriment to their ability to move the ball as well. The Ravens fullback has yet to play this season after suffering a calf injury during training camp. With Ricard on the field every game in 2024, the Ravens had the best rushing offense in the NFL, averaging 187.5 yards per game, which breaks down to 5.8 yards per attempt. While this is typically credited to the two-headed threat that Jackson and Derrick Henry provide out of the backfield, Ricard is as valuable to their success as the two are. The proof of this is seen in the Ravens' drop from best in football to 9th this season. Even before Jackson's injury, the Ravens ranked outside the top 10 in the first 4 weeks on the ground. This has been a major component in Henry's lack of production this year, dropping his yards per attempt by nearly a yard and his yards per game by nearly 40 per game. While the return of these 2 assets should improve the point production for Baltimore, their revival of the 2025 season will come down to defense. Perhaps next May, when the schedule is released, the Steelers can just tell the NFL to give them a loss on their Thursday night game to save us all the trouble. Pittsburgh is now 4-2 after a 33-31 loss to the Cincinnati Bengals, and they are staring a second straight loss in the face when they host the Green Bay Packers in Week 8. If only they had taken advantage of a Bengals team without Joe Burrow and Trey Hendrickson. There's a lot to get through, though, so let's get into winners and losers. Rodgers had his second game of the season with 4 touchdown passes and was in control for 4 quarters. A poorly timed deep ball to DK Metcalf that was picked off does deserve acknowledgement, but the second pick was more of a great play by DJ Turner than it was a bad throw by Rodgers. The four-time MVP had multiple touchdowns off extended plays. The first was to Jonas Smith when he had north of 8 seconds to throw. The second was a 68-yarder to Pat Freiermuth to give the Steelers the lead late in the fourth quarter. Rodgers certainly isn't what's wrong with the Steelers. He's everything right about them. Good for number 88. After his playing time went down due to Darnell Washington becoming a focal point of the offense, many were saying the Steelers should find a trade partner for the Penn State product. However, he caught 5 passes for 111 yards and 2 second-half touchdowns that should have propelled the Steelers to a win. Warren was tremendous on Thursday. He had 127 yards on the ground and averaged nearly 8 yards per carry and added 31 yards on 4 receptions. His explosiveness in the run game is what the Steelers' offense runs through, and this was his best showing of the season. When the Steelers bring Spencer Anderson on the field along with Darnell Washington for their jumbo package, their offense is nearly unstoppable. They utilized Anderson and Washington in motion as blockers multiple times to get a running start against the defense, and it proved to work very well. The more the Steelers use this, the better. Aside from Broderick Jones nearly killing Rodgers by celebrating a little too hard, the Steelers' offensive line was great. Rodgers had multiple touchdown passes on plays in which he had more than 7 seconds to throw, and he wasn't sacked for the second straight week. Additionally, the Steelers had 147 yards on the ground. The offensive line is coming into its own. Smith is getting himself in head coach conversations with the work he has done with this offense. The Steelers are 10th in points per game and 8th in EPA per play, and he had the offense rolling against the Bengals. Pittsburgh was 7 of 10 on third downs, had just under 400 yards of offense, and still lost because his coaching counterparts couldn't hold up their end of the bargain. Smith is the best coach on the Steelers staff, and that includes the head man. Considering just about everyone on the defense played awful, grouping them into one was the easiest route to go. Let's start with the defensive line. Aren't we all glad Cam Hayward complained about money for a month just to be a complete non-factor against the Bengals' bad offensive line? TJ Watt was invisible, as well, until late in the game where he and Hayward combined for a sack on Joe Flacco, which led to the second Freiermuth score. Unfortunately, that was all for naught because the defense let Flacco, Ja'Marr Chase, and T. Higgins prance down the field in the final 2 minutes in what was a very effortless drive to win the game. What's equally as frustrating was that the Bengals were averaging less than 60 yards per game on the ground, the worst in the NFL. Chase Brown was averaging less than 3 yards per carry. Well, the Bengals totaled 142 yards on the ground while Brown averaged 9.8 yards per carry. The Steelers didn't blitz Flacco, and they allowed the Bengals to do whatever they wanted all evening to the tune of 470 yards. Jalen Ramsey and Joey Porter Jr. were carved up all night, and both were penalized several times for pass interference. Darius Slay was also dreadful, and Flacco drew a large X on him at several points in this game. The Steelers can spend all the money they want on defense, but if their coaching is subpar, it doesn't matter. The NFL trade deadline for the 2025 regular season is fast approaching. Teams have until 4 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday, November 4th, to finalize deals that can either strengthen their roster now or build for the future. Real movement is expected in the coming weeks as playoff contenders look to add key upgrades across positions, while struggling teams aim to stockpile future draft picks. Here's a look at how some of the league's top contenders can address their biggest areas of concern. 11 NFL ideal trade deadline deals for 2025. Steelers trade for Jets RB Breece Hall. Hall is a pending free agent, and the Jets aren't certain about bringing him back on a long-term deal. The Chargers have dealt with the most injuries in the backfield, but Hall could also be a great fit in Pittsburgh, providing an overall upgrade over Jaylen Warren. He'd thrive in Arthur Smith's offense while reuniting with Aaron Rodgers. Lions trade for Bengals edge Trey Hendrickson. The Colts also need a complementary pass rusher and could be in the mix for former Bengals defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo. However, the idea of Trey Hendrickson teaming up with Aiden Hutchinson has long been viewed as an ideal scenario for Detroit, which is both the cap space and the motivation to pair two relentless pass-rushing stars together. The Bengals' Week 7 win over Pittsburgh gave Cincinnati's playoff hopes life, which could impact Hendrickson's availability, but the situation is still certainly worth monitoring. Patriots trade for Raiders WR Jacoby Myers. Myers has been a reliable target for Josh McDaniels in both New England and Las Vegas. He could replicate what Kendrick Bourne did for the 49ers before his time with the Patriots. Keyshawn Bout, Demario Douglas, and Stephon Diggs have all developed chemistry with Drake May, but adding a true big slot receiver who already knows the offense well would be a major boost for the second-year quarterback. Seahawks trade for Saints WR Rashid Shaheed. The Seahawks have rookie Torrey Horton flashing as a big play threat, but they could use a little more experience and extra speed to complement Jackson Smith-Njigba in Clint Kubiak's aggressive downfield passing game. Shaheed broke out for Kubiak when the latter also was in New Orleans. Chargers trade for Ravens Mark Andrews. Eagles trade for Browns G. Wyatt Teller. The Eagles need some interior help to upgrade from right guard Tyler Steen next to right tackle Lane Johnson. Teller is a pending free agent who still has something left to fit in well with their interior blocking scheme. Broncos trade for Browns G. Joel Bitonio. The Browns' longtime star left guard also unsigned beyond this season. They need some guard help with Ben Powers out with a biceps injury. Bitonio would be a welcome plug and play to make Denver stronger up front for both Bo Nix and the power running game.